Could I just make a small response to that? I would say that my reading of this is slightly different. Jamal has ever so slightly idealized the arrangement, particularly under the Pact of Umar. There were many disabilities imposed upon the dhimmis, including a lack of equality of law, restrictions on what they could wear, inability to repair churches or synagogues without permission, which was generally not available, inability to sell or display in public their holy books. Things which, looked at on paper, might seem to be minor, but actually imposed on you in your entire life, often unpleasant. The jizya also was often collected with the accompaniment of the slap in the face. And I'm afraid that it is, I yield to no one in my condemnation of the Christian persecution of Jews in the Middle Ages, an era of our existence which we have passed through and which I hope will never repeat. But I don't think that it's right to portray Islam in the same period as some kind of paradise of tolerance towards other faiths. It wasn't quite like that. And I think that there were other incidences in parts of North Africa where Jews and Christians were made to wear badges, I think respectively bearing pictures of pigs and monkeys. These things were done, and they were done in the name of Islam, and Islam has done things which are intolerant. And the operation of the dhimmi rules could be compared in some ways with the past laws in apartheid South Africa, in the effect that it had on those who benefited from this tolerance. Let's not idealize it. Islam is better than that now, and Christianity is better than it was, but it hasn't always been quite so pretty as it's sometimes portrayed.
I'd just like to address, maybe the speakers can address an issue which I think unfortunately has led to Islam being labelled in quite a negative way, which is, Peter mentioned it briefly in his address, which is the treatment of women in Islam. One of the views of women in Islam is that they're oppressed mainly because what Peter was talking about, the lack or the absence of equality in laws between men and women. So women have to cover in a certain way, and men cover do not have to cover in this way. Or for example, differences in roles in marriages between the husband and the wife, or even in terms of ruling, that a woman cannot hold a position of a ruler, whereas men can. So the label of oppression has been given to Islam because of differences in laws, but I would actually perhaps question the issue of whether equality in itself has led to respect of the woman within society. So for example, if you look in the West, look at Britain, which pushes the idea of equality between men and women, you find that a large amount of rapes within society, 1 in 4 women affected by domestic violence. So we can see that equality in itself has not led to the woman being respected in society. And I would actually perhaps push forward a unique social system that Islam addresses, which basically allows the woman to have a public role and have differences in terms of rights and responsibilities within life, but within an atmosphere of protection and honor, and where she's able to fulfill her responsibilities with cooperation with men in society. So I was wondering whether both speakers could address this issue of whether equality in itself or differences in laws between men and women in society has actually led to women being honored within society. But from what I can see, this is not the case, whereas Islam provides a separate social system.
Yeah, fine. The question of equality, I think it is often misrepresented because the responsibilities of the woman and the man in Islam are very numerous. You know, when we talk about prayers and fasting and, you know, looking after children, it is not just for the woman. And the responsibilities in terms of, there are differences between the male and the female, and that Islam actually highlights or recognizes some of those differences, particularly in the issue of childbearing. But in all of these other matters, so for example in political matters, I mean, we are facing a serious problem in the world today, and let's face it, in the Muslim world we have a very serious problem. And that is that we are divided, and that we are weak, and that we are occupied, or that we are ruled over by despotic regimes which have no semblance of Islam. Now,